everyone. This is Madeline Dale with the Chapter Goddess, and this morning I have an amazing author with you. I'm excited to hear about her book. I love the cover, and it's dystopian, so it's perfect for the times right now. I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us about her book.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the kind introduction. So yes, my name is Kimberly Hennessy. I am the author of She Runs with Wolves. And yeah, it's, I guess, the short version, because I have a really hard time condensing the book, the story behind the book. So basically the short version is, this is kind of like my version of a coming of age for a certain mature woman. So Ira is around the age of like 30, and she discovers that she's pregnant, and she's been held captive, and she doesn't want to give that life to her child, so she escapes. And she falls into the hands of this underground cult of this really old religion that's familiar but not familiar. And all the while this is happening, her whole body, her mind, everything is totally degrading. So, and she doesn't understand why, and she's totally losing grasp with reality, and her mind is unraveling. And the people of this underground cult say that they can help her, but she will have to lose something in exchange to help her save her baby and herself. And she's not sure that she can trust them. So anyways, push comes to shove. Basically, she goes through with it, and she loses part of herself. And so the remainder of the book is that she has to reconnect. She has to find herself again. So I won't go into too much detail, because I'm going to sell the punchline and everything, but she will have the help of 3 wolves, and they will try and help her to reconnect with her identity, with herself. And all the while there's AI, artificial intelligence, that's in play. And if you love tribal history, this is definitely a book for you.
That was something that really sparked my interest. Like reading the blurb was the tribal history stuff. Did you have to do a lot of research on that?
Yes. A lot of research. And the thing is that, so what I found difficult was that I created like a world where they don't know. So basically, so if you're a fan of like Mad Max, for example, anyways, I was very much inspired by Mad Max. So instead of like having a desert setting, this is a winter setting, because I live in Canada and we have winters and it's really cold. And so I was like, write what you know. And so what I found difficult is that I had created a world that didn't remember their past. And so I had to come up with like these, I couldn't come up with the words. Like I couldn't say, oh, well, this is a fridge, because they didn't know that it was a fridge. So I had to come up with really creative ways to explain in the book what these people were looking at. So for example, like a flat screen TV, it's like, for them, it's like this weird mirror, and so forth. So I had to become really creative in trying to find lingo that that people would recognize. Oh, okay, she's talking about a fridge and things like that. Although that's like totally secondary in nature, but it was definitely part of the process that I loved very much, was discovering, because see, that's what I loved about tribal history, is that what I wanted to create was a book or a story that talks about, how can I put this? So what I love about I'm trying to put the words together. So what I love about it is creating a world that is in the future, but is so destroyed by bombs and things like that, because we're in a post-apocalyptic world. So that all the remnants are actually more advanced technologically than the people that are using them, right? So yeah. And that to me was super interesting. And that was part of the genesis of this whole thing. It wasn't the genesis. It kind of came as I was writing and everything, but it definitely was at the beginning of me creating this story, where I was like, how, because basically when I started this story, the one quote that came to mind was Einstein's quote of saying, I don't know how World War III will be fought, but World War IV and so forth will be fought with sticks and stones. And basically what he's saying is that we will destroy ourselves so badly that nothing will be left. And that was kind of the premise of where I was going with this, is that we will destroy ourselves so badly that all will be left will be sticks and stones and remnants of a past that was so advanced technologically that they don't even know what these things are for anymore. And that's the kind of book that I tried to create. So the setting and the environment, although secondary, is extremely important. It took me a very, very long time to create. And it's very layered because I started from the ground, the first draft, and it had barely any, it was like bones, and then I built on that, and then the third draft, more, fourth, I have like, I think, I don't even want to say how many drafts have been.
Yeah.
It's a lot. But I do think like maybe because I was criticized that the characters maybe not as fleshed out as people would have liked them. And it's true, perhaps I hadn't fleshed them out as much as the actual environment. But my background is filmmaking. So when I write a story, it's very succinct, it's very tight. I'm plot driven. So the setting, the environment for me is extremely vibrant, and then we have to move forward. So maybe that explains why my characters aren't as fleshed out, but the story, I feel that the story really makes up for that fact. So, and
well, it sounds fascinating. Like a lot of work has gone into it. So
it did. Yes. I put in a lot of research and a lot of work, and sometimes, and it's funny because you're a writer, obviously. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we writers always joke that, you're going to spend a whole day of research. And then at the end of the day, you're like, and I did all this for one line. It's like one sentence in a book. And you're like, my God, I wasted like a whole day for one sentence. But that sentence is absolutely accurate. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. And this is basically what had happened to me when I wrote this, is that the research that I did was really extensive. And and that was it. Yeah.
It's well worth it though, because it sounds like the world building you did is it's amazing. So
well, thank you. Yes, like I said, I worked really hard on it, and next, and in book 2, I will be working on developing those characters more. This was basically because there's so many elements to the book. Like I said, like there's the wolves, there's the artificial intelligence. And so this was my first book. So I didn't want to write a 400-page book. That was not, I wanted to start already. I found that I was like biting off more than I could chew. I was like, I need to keep this, more simpler. My husband is always saying like, oh my God, keep it simple, keep it simple. And then I tend to just make things more complicated for myself. So I was really trying to keep it simple.
Your mind got carried away. I get that. Like I have that same problem because the series I'm working on right now, I'm doing it for NaNoWriMo, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this book is going to be so much longer than I thought. Like,
that's it. And you're like, you're going in this direction, and then you're like, oops, no, I'm going in that direction. And then if you're anything like me, you're like, oh my God, the two don't connect. How am I going to make these?
Yes. I was sitting contemplating that last night. I was like, crap. How did I go this direction? Like, how am I going to bring this around?
Yeah. Well, that's it. We're of the same ilk. We definitely think the same. Yeah.
Yes.
And there's no control over it. It's just how your mind works. You're like always, it's so big. And then it's almost as if you have like all the puzzle in front of you and you're slowly like putting the pieces together. But the puzzle is like, instead of like a small, easy puzzle to tackle, you choose these big 10,000 piece puzzles. And you're like, oh my God, why am I taking my life so hard?
Yes, the ones that take forever, but they're well worth it.
Yes.
So with writing this book, did you come across any periods of time where you struggled with writer's block?
No, I don't think I struggled with writer's block. I did struggle once I finished the book, then I was just like so drained mentally that I couldn't have, for the life of me, picked up a pencil or typed or a single word. I was trying to be creative, but there was nothing to do. I was just so drained because it took so much out of me. But it's not just because of the creativity behind it. It's also because like I'm self-published. So I was learning all about that as well. And so again, biting off like more than I can chew instead of, I don't know, for some reason, instead of asking for help, I'm trying to do all of this like by myself. And it's just so many moving pieces and so much. But now that it's all behind me, I'm like, oh, it's not that complicated. But when you're in it, it's like, oh my God, I have to think of this. Oh my God. And you don't know how they all connect once again. But yeah, no, during the writing process, I write every day. And even if it's just a little bit, I'll write. And I read somewhere, and I forget who it was. Someone, a well-known author said I forget who it was. They said that they always left, and this is something that I learned a little later on while I was writing the book, but they always left the writing at the end of the day with one more chapter to write, in the sense that they knew what they wanted to write when the next day would start. So you don't finish your idea completely, because then that way the next day you're like, oh, well, now I finished this, where am I at? So that way you're kind of like always going with the flow, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So that was one tip that I had definitely put in place and was very helpful for writer's block. And it took me 3 years to write this story. So, and even longer, it's been even longer than that. Like I was thinking about it for a very long time. And then when I decided to actually sit down and put pen to paper, it literally took me it took me like 8 months to write, but then the remaining of the years was editing. So draft after draft after draft after draft. And so writer's block, if like, let's say I was getting stuck, because it did happen where I kind of, painted myself into a corner basically, and like, where am I going with this? And again, how am I going to connect these things? They don't work. So that's happened. And often, I would go out for a walk and try and find, literally I went back to the drawing board. And when I say drawing board, is I completely, rewrote the book like twice. So if I ever found like, oh my God, this is no good, and like the book was done and I was rereading it, I was like, it doesn't work. I went and rewrote it. So I was never like for months on end of not writing. That never happened. But I was, like I said, I was always working on something. Ideas were always spinning, always in motion. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. So your creativity flows really well. So
it really does. But I think that comes with a lot of research. When you're doing research, you come up on all these ideas. Like, I can't say that my book is new or anything like that. I'm a bit like Quentin Tarantino in the sense that he says he steals from whatever, but I say I borrow. So when I read something, I'm like, this is so good, I'm going to borrow that, So I'm always inspired by different authors, movies, films, ideas. So I'm always looking for ways to, how could I integrate that? That's so cool into my work, So I'm always left with ideas. Some, stay on the cutting floor. A lot of my ideas stayed on the cutting floor, and only a few that worked well I left in the book.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So with your writing schedule, do you have a specific plan of like self-care that you follow to help with things?
This is totally new. I realized that being an author, you definitely need self-care, and I've never been one for self-care. Like even when I was younger, I wasn't the type to pour myself a bath and candles and stuff like that. I was never really like that. But when you're a writer and you're at home and you have the chance of writing full time, you can tend to get lost in front of the screen and literally pass breakfast, lunch, supper. I couldn't do because I have kids. So I had to literally get off my butt and go make supper. But I could easily spend 10 hours of my day in front of a computer screen. And I realized after a couple of drafts of doing that I was utterly depressed and sad. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. And, and it's not because I was getting rejections or anything like that, or I was getting anything bad, but I wasn't necessarily getting anything positive either, in the sense that, I was sending it to different editors, trying to field out an editor that was right for me. And, they were like, oh, okay. So after my 9 months of writing, I thought I was done. I was like, it's done. I've got a book. I'm ready to publish. And then I sent it off to an editor with whom I didn't work with afterwards because we kind of didn't connect. But the person literally said, well, this is a good first draft. And I was like, gutted. I was like, what? This is a first draft? Are you kidding me? I poured my heart and soul in this. And I realized then, and that's the piece of advice that I offer to anybody who wants to start their writing career, is that, by the way, your first draft isn't your book, And then I learned the hard way after thousands of reiterations of my work that, the first draft definitely was not my book. And I'm glad that I didn't put that out there, because I would have been completely humiliated. And I think at the end of the day, what I wanted most in putting out my first book was, if people don't like the story, if they can't connect with it, that's fine, as long as they don't come back and say it was poorly written. I think that would have been my utter humiliation, was to have people say, oh, this author sucks, but if they say, well, this author really has no idea of a good story, she can't spin a story, I'd be like, okay, well, that's your opinion. But good writing, people can tell. So I think that was the main thing. And now after going through multiple editors, I realized that, okay, thank God I didn't put that book out there. But and so I forget, we kind of went off gear here. What was the question again?
Just if you have a routine of self-care.
Oh, right. So so I realized, not early on, it took me a while, that I need to limit the amount of time that I spend in front of the screen, and that writing can't be my sole purpose in life. I love writing. I enjoy it very much. But if I do it to a point of obsession, and I can easily get obsessed with that, then not only will I be turned off writing for a very long time, because like I said, after I finished writing, I was totally burnt out. I had expended so much of myself, and it takes time to get back into the mood of doing it, of writing it. And that's not even to talk about the fact that, you have your heart on your sleeve when people start reviewing it. So if, in addition of coming out of writing a book, you're depleted and you're looking at negative comments, forget it. You're just going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too hard, So so I definitely learned the hard way that self-care is an absolute must. So what I do is I definitely have a routine now where I wake up in the morning. I exercise every day now. And that's really important. And if I don't exercise, that's because I'm going outside to take a walk and to just clear your mind. And honestly, it helps with the writing. Like, there's no doubt about it. It helps with the writing. If you're always stuck in the same words, you're just going to be regurgitating the same words. You need to disconnect. You need to just not think about it. And so meditation very much. And, going to do, well, now with COVID, you can't do much, but, I used to be big into cultural activities, like going to the theater, going to the movies and things like that. So definitely you need to keep that into the routine. But I wake up in the morning, I get my kids ready for school. I sit down, I read the papers, I read the hot topics of the day. And then I look at my agenda, look what's on my agenda. And I always have a specific time for writing. And I find that I'm more productive in that time that I give myself, if I, instead of allowing like 10 hours of time to just write, and then I'm like in front of the computer, thinking, if I give myself 2 hours, well, I'm going to use those 2 hours to really commit. Right. So Yeah. So that's it. That's kind of like my routine. There's nothing set in stone. Obviously, I'm flexible in that sense, but, and also, and it's important. Like I've like writing was my life for like the past 3 years, and I don't want to do that again. I want to be more balanced. So I'm trying to find other kinds of works that I can do, because I do filmmaking. Well, I'm a screenwriter. I do copywriting. I write books. It's always just writing all the time. So I'm trying to look at different things that I could do that will take me kind of away from writing. It's too much, So I think it's important to have balance.
Agreed. Balance is good. I've been learning and like seeing what others do for self-care, because there's so many different methods of self-care. Like there's so many methods.
Well, I see you have a piano. So if you enjoy playing piano, then that's definitely something that you can do that'll bring joy to your life, And you mentioned that you have I don't know.
Son, yeah,
you have a child. So that definitely also, like me, when my kids were little, it was always like a struggle of, but I have to go writing. And now I regret having done that. What I should have done is give myself permission to write for 2 hours and then stop and then be with my kids. And it was always, and I never did that, because it was always a struggle of, I have to get it done. I have to get it done. I have to get it done. And that's a mistake, because no, you don't really have to get it done. And your kids are going to grow up and they're going to leave at one point. So now my kids are like teenagers. And I realized that, as much as I benefited and I stayed home with them and I appreciate all the time, I think I could have been even more balanced, in the sense that when I was with them, I should have been present with them, not always thinking about books and writing and things like that. Because it's too much. It's too much, and you need balance.
Yes, I agree completely. So go ahead and tell our viewers where they can find you and your work.
Where they can find me in my work. Well, my website, definitely at KimberlyTHennessy.com. So that's LYT Hennessy SSY. There's no E in between the S and the Y. And on there, you can find all my social media. So you can connect with me on Facebook. Honestly, this is new. I only go on my Facebook once a day now. I found that I was wasting too much time, and it was actually making me really unhappy. So I was like, I'm looking at this and it's just not satisfying at all. So it was just too much scrolling. And so I decided once a day. So I don't go as much, but I definitely go once. So if you want to connect with me on there on my author page, that's great. Also Pinterest, I love to pin stuff. And with Instagram, again, I don't go much on that either. And the one where I really shine and people really, my readers love to interact with me, is my newsletter. So on my newsletter, it's a short newsletter that I send out once a month. And I talk about the movies that I've seen. Like recently it was Dune. I don't know if you're a big fan, but anyways, I'm a huge fan of Dune. And I was waiting forever for this movie to come out. And so finally it came out. So I talk about that, about how much I loved it. And then, people, the readers, they can comment and then they talk to me, and then we talk about our, oh, what did you like? And that's where I really shine on the one-on-one communications with my readers. And so that's it. So if you want to connect with me on my newsletter, that's really the best place for it.
Excellent. And I'm going to have the links to all of her stuff in the comments. If you're watching this on social media, or if you're looking at YouTube, you can find it in the bottom, and also hit the subscribe button. All right, Kimberly, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you. This was so much fun. It went by so fast.
Oh, it really did. Yes.
I really, really loved talking with you. Some interviews are harder than others, and this was really, really easy, and it flows. I'm a bit of a chatterbox, but yeah, this was a lot of fun. So thank you.
No problem. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye.